Hey everybody, I'm Sam Haymart and you're watching Test Driven TV. Today we're test driving the 2025 Ford Explorer, which recently got a design refresh inside and out and repackaging of all of its trim grade. This is the ST, the high performance one, and it now comes in rear wheel drive. And that's what we've got here. So I'm going to show it to you inside and out. We're going to take it for a drive and then I'm going to tell you what I really think. Okay everybody, let's have a good look at the vehicle that Ford has given us to test drive this week. This is the 2025 Explorer and we are test driving a rear wheel drive ST trim grade, which is 3/4 of the way up on the trim grade scale. The Platinum is the next more luxurious model and you can spend more on the Platinum when you add options, although the base price of the ST and the Platinum's a little less than the ST, but when you actually start piling on the options and the packages on the Platinum, you can go a lot further with that. The price on this one, $57,000 and some change. It does have the Star White paint, which if you want white, you get to pay for it. So that is the one and only option on this vehicle for this price. Ironically though, you can still go a lot further with this if you do some of the packaging, some of the standalone options. If you go all the way, you can get just right up at $70,000. You can really do that here. So there's the pricing. That's what we're looking at as far as dollars and cents. Let's talk about the styling, because for 2025, they gave this a mild refresh. So looking at the front, you can see we've got a new grille design. We've got new LED headlights and a new fascia design that includes LED fog lights here on the ST. And the grille on the ST is unique to this trim. It is a gloss black honeycomb grille with an ST logo. Pretty handsome looking, but hard to clean. As you can see, I have a time constraint, forgive me. But I think it does point out the fact that if you were living with this every day, you would almost really need to spend about 15 minutes on that grille every time you clean this car if you really want it to be clean. Coming around the corner, it is a 21-inch alloy wheel on this with 275 width tires, some nice rubber. And look at the brakes, nice red calipers in there too, both front and rear. Black plastic wheel arches. Coming down the side, you can see this does have a nicely decorated lower rocker trim with a gloss black inset. Up on the roof, standard roof rails so that you can apply any number of different types of crossbars and accessories. It is an SUV after all. At the rear 3/4 view, this is a pretty distinctive design in the market, I think, and when you look at it, it's just definitely distinctive. Now, part of that is that rear window line, the way it has a wraparound glass look, and it's very angular, and it's very similar actually to the last generation Ford Explorer, but they've continued the evolution in the design in such a way that with the built-in spoiler in that rear deck, it just really works for me. And the way that new taillights are designed, and there's some articulation in the shape and the massing, it all comes together quite well. This does have a power hatch, as you would expect at this price. Now let's look at the lower bumper. This is an area that has also gotten a little bit of a redesign, but one of the carryover features are these really handsome looking quad exhaust tips. 4 metal chrome exhaust tips, very sporting. That comes with this particular engine, but the problem is, they're fake. When you look underneath them and you find out that air actually does not blow through those handsome, genuine steel exhaust tips, not at all. They've got a little bit of a trick there that goes where that exhaust pipe turns down and exits out the bottom of those things. And the engineers will tell us it's so that they never look dirty, right? We don't want to really show people all of what comes out of there, because these new modern direct injected engines and turbos, why they put out a lot of soot, they put a lot of oil residue, they're not pretty. I get that. But you chose to put that engine under the hood. This is fakery. This is design character flaw in my mind. I don't like it when automakers do this. I always chew on it. I always point it out, and that's just where I'm at. I think the customer is smarter than this, and I just don't like it. The interior of the 2025 Ford Explorer is an area where most of the new refresh and redesign has taken place. It's really almost a complete redesign of the interior. Most importantly, a new dash design that not only looks better, works better, but has a much higher level quality of materials. The 2024 and back Explorers were sort of panned quite a bit for having sort of a cheap interior, a Ford grade interior. We've got a level of technology, features, and now a level of quality, for the most part, that is much better than before. And in the ST, this has a nice sporty trim treatment with red stitching everywhere, a lot of soft stitch trims. These seats are actually ActiveX, which is a vinyl, but the center inserts are Miko suede. And so they're a nice seat. They're a nice sport seat, power operated both for the driver and the passenger. They have heating, they have ventilation. Oh, and they also have a massage function that you can access through the new center screen here. As I sit here and look forward, a nice sport steering wheel with red stitching, paddle shifters, an ST logo right here on it, and ahead of me a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster, which is also new. Now, I got to pick on one thing though, and this is the one area of the new Ford quality here that didn't quite match up. If you look at the steering column and the driver sensor for the Blue Cruise that's sticking up, it's that big square block, the steering column is actually rotated about 2 degrees to the left. So it's like a picture that's a little bit crooked when you compare it to what you're looking at ahead of it on the instrument cluster. The instrument cluster and the steering wheel, as you drive down the road straight, do not line up with the rotation angle of the steering column, and it just bugs the living daylights out of me. I noticed it when I first got behind the wheel, and I can't unsee it. And I'm a Type A, I straighten pictures. I could never live with this car with that going on. Now, in fairness to Ford, I don't know if this is a design issue or if this is just a manufacturing issue with this specific vehicle, but I've looked at a few pictures and I've seen this in some of the other vehicles that are out there. So I don't know. I'm just pointing it out because this really bugs me here. But moving on, over here we have a new center stack screen, which is 13.2 inches, and we'll talk about that separately. But what's important to point out about it right at the gate is the fact that all of the climate controls are now moved up to the touch screen. They're no longer part of a hard control setup. And down below the vents are a few little buttons for a few things, a volume knob. Also new for this year is this new little cubby that sticks out of the dash. It's a little shelf that has a wireless charger, a place to put your phone so it's easily accessible. I like that. Down below it is a cubby hole where there's 2 USB ports, a 12-volt port, and quite a bit of storage down there inside. Center console has 2 cup holders off to the side, Ford's trademark dial-a shift, which don't care for it too much. I have it in my own vehicle. I much prefer lever, especially in a vehicle that has sporting intentions such as this. Drive mode selector to the back. Center console storage here is actually quite good. It is about the size of almost 2 square tissue boxes. It's big enough for, I would say, even a 6-pack of soda, and then you could put a few things on top. It's a nice sized box. It's nice and deep and takes advantage of all the space here. In this particular Ford Explorer, this has the 6-passenger seating configuration with 2 captain's chairs in the back and 2 seats in the back in the 3rd row. These seats are heated back here on this trim grade, and as you can see, I've got plenty of space back here. These seats are set for my height, about 5'8" with my tennis shoes on. I've got about 4 inches ahead of my knees, and headroom, it feels like at least 6 inches above my head, so we're all good there. The comfort of these seats, not the most comfortable in the world, but they are pretty good overall. They have full down armrests, and they do have a fore and aft adjustment as well as a recline adjustment. And there's quite a few amenities back here. In addition to the heated seats, I do have some rudimentary controls for the HVAC system back here. Power ports, both USB. There's an AC port back here. Now, there's no vents on the back of that console, but we do have vents up here in the ceiling, both for the 2nd row and for the 3rd row. There's also the little sunshades here, which I always love. Keep the sun off the baby. Now, getting into the 3rd row is pretty easy. The seat slides forward. You have easy access into the 3rd row, which actually has pretty good space back there. More than some, maybe not quite as much as others, but you can actually sit adults back there. Trust me, I'm not going to show you that on camera, but you can actually sit back there. It's not just for kids. So in addition to the seat moving forward, you can also utilize the space between the captain's chairs to get fore and aft. Now, those seats fold down quite nicely. Power folding 3rd row, they fold down individually, power completely, and once they're down, then you have a pretty flat load floor. And when these captain's chairs fold down, They're actually level with that for the most part. So you have a fully flat floor all in. Underneath that floor, you're going to find quite a bit of storage area, and there's not only a big center spot in the middle to throw your gear, your boots, maybe just things you don't access all the time, but there's also a few cubbies in the side. Underneath the floor of that little storage area, you'll find a mini spare, which is very important. It's not a full-size spare, but it is a temporary spare, which is very, very important on an SUV that you might find yourself far out in the open, where we are with our test drive today, and there's no cell service, so it's nice to have that. So this is an interior that, as I said at the outset, much better than last year's model. The design is handsome. The material quality is generally pretty good. The only complaint I had was this one little issue here, and I really hate to beat on it too hard because I don't know what's going on, if that's just something Ford decided to do because they do things like this sometimes, or maybe this particular vehicle, being a pre-production vehicle in fairness, might just have an issue there. That said, this is an interior that, but not for this, would be a 5-star interior. Very well done. Here, it gets 4.5 out of 5 stars. The infotainment system here is an all-new system from Ford that sort of moves on from the old days of Sync 3, Sync 4. It is now what's called the Ford Digital Experience infotainment system. In this vehicle, it's a 13.2-inch screen, and it is fully featured. It's got a number of cool features. It's got Google backend built in. It has a lot of native apps built in, like YouTube. It has Amazon Alexa. It has some of the Google features like Google Maps and so forth. But if you don't want to use that native stuff, you can connect your phone. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, those are wireless. You can also plug it in. You can use Bluetooth. There's a number of ways, all of the ways, in fact, to connect to this system with your device. It has navigation backed up by Google. It has a great sounding B&O audio system. Now, this is sort of the mid-grade system here. You can go all the way up with a package and get the Mongo system that's got 14 speakers. This one's only got 10. The menu structure using this, very well done. Really, the only thing I complain about here is the fact that the climate controls are built into this. Not my favorite setup, but once you get used to it, it does work. Just gone are the days of really having knobs and a few buttons. Luckily, they did put a bank of the most common used buttons down at the bottom of the screen, so you still have that. This also has a very nice 360-degree camera that has good graphics. It's got good visibility. It moves with the steering wheel so you can see where your vehicle's tracking. Stepping back and getting out of the weeds and the detail, this is my first time using the new Ford Digital Experience infotainment system, and I have to tell you that in this installation, I like it. It's well done. It's got good graphics. It's easy to use. It's fully featured and then some. I like the native apps built in so that you don't have to use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto to get some of those features. And it just works well. It's got a good sound too, even though you could even step up and get better sound. This is a nice system, and the fact that it's rolling out in all of their vehicles, even the base models, at least variations of it, that's good news. This system gets 5 out of 5 stars. All right, my good friends, finally time to take a drive. My favorite part of our video production effort. It's because we're actually seeing and doing, not just me talking about the car. So let's talk about what the Explorer is first. When they first pulled out the sheet of paper to design this generation Explorer, they started with the Mustang chassis. They moved from the front-wheel drive chassis the last generation was on to a rear-wheel drive chassis, and the Mustang platform was the place they started. So while this is not exactly the same platform as a Mustang, the design and a lot of the bones are very similar, if not the same. So it's not a stretch to say that this is almost sort of a Mustang SUV. And the reason I point all that out is because it drives like one. It has a very similar front suspension, a near identical rear suspension, and the chassis and the overall feel of this vehicle is just as sharp and precise as the current generation Mustang. And I love that in an SUV. Much more fun and engaging to drive than, let's say, one of the front-wheel drive options you can get from some of the other brands. And I'm not going to name them, you know what they are. So what we have here in the ST is taking that another level to performance that is up there with Mustang. While we don't have the 5.0 V8, we've got a chassis here that is dialed in with a lot of the same precision and sportiness, and with the drive modes you can set it up there and get this feeling pretty sharp. With these large tires and wheels, it feels pretty sharp. So this is a 3-row SUV you can take on a back road, throw into a corner, and it works. It feels it. It likes it. Now, as far as the ride is concerned, on the ST in particular, it is tuned pretty stiff, and out here on this back road, the road noise is a little bit on the higher side, partially because of this pavement, but on our 70-mile-an-hour test that I normally do measuring the decibels, this came in about average, even though we've got these larger tires. Cattle guard. Around town, this feels a pretty competent chassis. It does get a little bit harsh going over speed bumps, potholes, railroad tracks, things like that, in part because we do have these big wheels and low profile tires. If you had one of the other trim grades with a taller sidewall, you would be in better shape. But of the 3-row SUVs that I test, this has got a chassis that is the most fun. That I can tell you. So I'm very happy. This chassis gets 4.5 out of 5 stars. Now the fun part, we get to talk about what's under the hood and what motivates this. It does not have the 5-liter V8 just because it's based on the Mustang design. They didn't go there, but they did throw us a bone. This has the 3-liter twin turbocharged EcoBoost V6 that we also find in the Ranger Raptor. We also find it in the Bronco, and it's a nice little motor. 400 horsepower, 415 pound-feet of torque, 10-speed automatic transmission. I have driven it in a number of other vehicles, and I've always liked it. It just works. And if you watch my videos, you know the question I always like to ask is, how does it go? So we're in sport mode. This is rear-wheel drive, mind you, and go. Poof. And 60. Pretty quick. Woo! You can hear it. Come into a corner here, mash the pedal. Yep, good power, good torque. You can really hear it though. Woo. Now, so the power is going to make most people smile if you really like dipping into it. The transmission on this 10-speed automatic that Ford has, I've been happy with it in almost every single thing I've tested it in, even some of the Chevrolets. It's good. It works well. There's paddle shifters here, and that's good because there's no lever down here. It's that dial-a-shift stuff that I'm not so happy with. But this is a transmission that never makes you go, gosh, I wish I had a manual. It works well. Now, this engine, a little bit noisy. It's on the noisy, thrashy side. Not so much noticed that in some of the other vehicles I've tested, so it might be the sound deadening here, but it's not a pretty sounding engine. It makes noise when you really push it. And driving around town, you even kind of hear it making mechanical noise under there. Fuel economy. This is rated at 18 city, 25 highway, cattle guard, and 21 mpg combined. It has auto start stop, which just kicked in, and you can turn it off. I usually do. In my week with this, I got 18 mpg. Now, that's less than it says. Air conditioner's been on. It's still nice and warm here in Phoenix, Arizona. But 18 is still not a terrible number for a big SUV like this, given the fact that we've got 400 horsepower. So I'm not going to rag on it too badly for efficiency. It's a lot better than some of the ones I've tested of recent time. And the fact that we've got all this horsepower and fun at the press of a pedal sort of makes me forget about fuel economy sometimes. So really my takeaways with this powertrain are that it has the power, it's got the refinement, in most parts of its living with it everyday experience. The only thing I wish for is maybe at this price a little bit more sound deadening so it's not quite as thrashy. This powertrain gets 4.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, my friends, as always, the last part of the conversation we have is value and competitiveness. Well, this is one of the largest segments in the automotive realm, at least here in the United States. There are so many options when you start looking at a mid-size 3-row SUV, mid to large size, and almost from every single brand. And there's a lot of ways you can have them, from affordable somewhat to very, very expensive. And this is no different. One of the things that really sets this vehicle apart from most of the competitors out there is the fact that it's built on a rear-wheel drive biased platform. Front engine, rear-wheel drive. You can have all-wheel drive, but you can have rear-wheel drive. And there's not that many competitors out there that you can really go apples to apples with that offer that format. The Dodge Durango is one of them that's really the closest in my mind, but very old design. It's a good one and actually quite competitive to this in a lot of ways, but it's very old design and its future is limited. So that said, here we are at $57,000 and some change as equipped. You can spend up to $70,000 on this thing quite easily by stacking on the options. And if you go with the platinum trim grade, you can go a little bit over that. So we're not all the way up to the top here at this price. In fact, at $57,000 and some change, we're really at the low end of the ST scale. If you go with a lower trim grade, you can get down quite a bit. That said, when I look at things like quality, build quality, panel gaps, alignment, crooked steering columns, things like that, the quality of the materials inside, and just the overall feel of the vehicle, I look at that. I look at things like warranty coverage, which here is class average, but it's a pretty high side of class average in my opinion. And then I look at what else you can get for this price. If you look at anything from Toyota, Nissan, Chevrolet, Dodge, if you start going any of those standard sort of vanilla flavor directions, you can spend this much money quite easily. And you're not going to get the rear-wheel drive bias driving experience or the horsepower at a lot of those competitors if that's what you're looking for. So in this particular case, with this horsepower and performance angle, not many competitors to really go apples to apples with. So I think it really kind of represents a good value if that's what you're looking for. So here I put value at 4.5 stars. When you put that in with everything else we've already talked about, rate's pretty good, 4.6 stars for the total review. Yeah, so I'm pretty impressed with it overall. I've always wanted, a Mustang SUV, and that's essentially what this is, mechanically speaking, in a lot of ways. It shares a lot of bones and under chassis design elements with the Mustang platform, and so ironically, it feels like one, only a real tall one. So yeah, if you like what we do, see our latest video right there. Better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel right down there. Either way, stay tuned.